welcome back once again. This is Chris Report, and he assured me that St. Simon's down in Boulders. Folks, this is Chris Wyatt reporting from South Africa. Hello once again, folks. This is Chris in central Pennsylvania. South Africa faces epic elections on May 29th, 2024. The most significant elections since 1994 and the advent of the modern democracy. And what an election is. Let's talk about that election. This is the current composition of the South African Parliament. The African National Congress has a 29-seat majority. You need 201 out of 400 seats to rule outright. However, according to the Brent Hurst survey that just came out, recorded through late February of 2024, the African National Congress is in a lot of electoral trouble as voters abandoned it for Jacob Zuma's barely existing MK party, the Umkhonto we Sizwe party. Now, MK has done well in recent by-elections with 21% and 28% in two successive KZN KwaZulu-Natal elections, followed up with a surprising 28% in Mpumalanga province. Now, its strength in these by-elections is frightening the ANC. Based on the Brent Hurst recent survey of likely voting in May 2024, the ruling ANC is wading into uncharted electoral waters, headed for big losses in Gauteng, Western Cape, and in the KwaZulu-Natal province. Nationally, the ANC is in a window which I predicted back in November 2021 following the municipal elections, which is 39% support in this election. That's what the Brent Hurst survey tells us, 39%. My prediction in early November of 2021 was the ANC would fall somewhere between 38 and 42%, best case. They're right in that window at this moment, according to Brent Hurst. Now, if these polls are accurate, the ANC will be forced to make a lot of accommodations in order to form a coalition because it will not achieve 50% plus one. As I say, if the Brent Hurst survey is accurate, and it appears likely to be so for the moment, this will be the composition of the next parliament, the first since 1994 without a majority party. Only 4 parties secure more than 10 seats: the African National Congress, the Democratic Alliance, the MK Party, and the Economic Freedom Fighters. Now, this is not a good outcome for South Africans, folks. True, knocking the ANC off its arrogant perch is healthy for the recently democratic South Africa. However, a wounded beast is most dangerous when cornered. Already wildly reviled for its kleptocratic ways, its race hustling, its inept management of government, self-enrichment of favored cadres or cadre, the ANC will now have to swallow its massive ego and pride if it wants to govern. And that means compromise, at least publicly. Now, what follows are 4 potential coalitions scenarios arising from the embers this year's election that I'm predicting are possible. All are based on an understanding of the political parties themselves, their true intentions, and the results of the Brent Hurst survey. Any one of them is a possibility, but none are a certainty. And yes, I'm aware the DA asserted that it would not enter into a coalition with the African National Congress. To do so would compromise the party, but then we never expected the DA to act like the ANC light in 2019 either, did we? First, the implosion of South Africa scenario. Here, the African National Congress teams up with MK. Now, this alliance would give 52% of the vote for a slim majority with 206 seats in the parliament, if the polls are correct. Now, Zuma professes they hate the ANC, but the MK and Zuma crave power more than their hatred for the place of their birth, the African National Congress. This is a possibility, and it shouldn't shock anyone. MK is a child of the ANC, much like COPE, much like EFF, and arguably even the Patriotic Alliance. Now, next we have the scenario, the Zimbabwe for South Africa scenario. In this scenario, a desperate Democratic Alliance would make the argument that it is better to form a government for South Africans and will promise to keep the lid on ANC excesses. However, like ZANU-PF in Zimbabwe, the ANC will retain all genuine levers and portfolios of power, leaving the Democratic Alliance to clean up its macroeconomic mess, just like the MDC did in Zimbabwe after 2008. It may be a coalition convenience and a short-lived one at that. Should the DA enter into this coalition, it will shed voters en masse at the following election. The ANC will take credit for improving the economy and hang on to power. That scenario is followed by the Armageddon scenario, where the ANC and its evil spawn team up in an ANC-MK-EFF coalition, whereupon they rapidly pillage South Africa to its demise, leading to its formal collapse and possibly even civil conflict as the Zulu Nation and the Western Cape attempt secession. Finally, we have a distasteful but potentially pragmatic grand coalition where adults somehow inexplicably rise within the ANC and push out the corrupt fossils, then form a coalition with a multi-party charter. This is the best outcome of the coming election and probably the least likely one. The only other scenario is an unthinkable coalition between the MPC, MK, and EFF that puts them at 52% in parliament. Such a joining is unlikely to last long and is unpalatable for the EFF and for the DA. Whatever the case, provided this is a free and fair election, South Africa will move forward with a fragile coalition or with a minority government, neither of which is a good outcome for South Africans. Many political analysts claim that a coalition is a good outcome. It's not. We've seen what happens in South African coalitions in Nelson Mandela Bay, in Johannesburg, in eThekwini, in Ekurhuleni, and of course in Tshwane. Disaster. After May 2024, South Africa is likely to resemble Italy. Well, yes, South Africa has vineyards like you see behind me, and Italy has plenty of vineyards. That's not why it will resemble it. It will resemble it for its inability to govern itself. Italy, where since the end of the Second World War in 1945, there have been 69 governments. That's an average of one government every 1 year and 1 month. 69 governments had to be formed in Italy since the end of the Second World War. That is what we're looking at in South Africa going forward. It's not a good outcome for South Africans, and it will lead to paralysis and yet more service delivery collapse and likely civil unrest. People aren't listening. They're not voting with their minds. They're voting with their ethnic identification and or their hearts. People need to vote with their minds and vote for parties that will actually govern legitimately, not the ANC, not the EFF, and certainly not MK. Well, buckle up, South Africa. It's going to be a bumpy ride from here on out. God bless. Fair winds and smooth sailing. Thanks a lot, folks. Be sure to hit the like button and join us by becoming a subscriber. It costs you nothing, and we appreciate the support. Cheers.